So I'm going to give you a little bit of my own family history because I promised the protectors that I only speak for myself. I don't speak for any other protector because we're all up there for our own reasons and everybody's accountable for their own selves. I'm not accountable for another protector's actions. I'm just accountable for mine. And if somebody goes out of line, I'm not going to bear that responsibility. I just have to be in myself, be in my most pono self. So I cannot take on anybody else. So neither will I speak on their behalf. I speak on behalf of my family. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a story, and I hope you're settling in and you're okay being with me today, because I'm like certainly really feeling great being here with you folks, and I could really just cry, really and truly. So I'm going to tell you something that's really deep and spiritual, and I'm just going to ask you not to think that my family is crazy. Okay, that's all. But sit in and no need, understand, just embrace us for who we are. Because trust me, we're not trying to convince you of anything. So, a long time ago, we were camping at a beach called Omalu near Waikoloa Island of Hawaii. I was raised there in a Parker Ranch family. And my grandmother was sitting on the beach that day, my father's mother, who's Hawaiian from Kohala. And my mother was sitting with her. And my dad, them were out holo holo in the ocean. They were catching fish. And my grandma said, pack everything up. We gotta get out of here. And my mom said, why do we have to get out of here? And my grandma was one of those Hawaiians that look up in the tree. Said, because the mo'o said, big wave is coming. Mo'o, the little lizard on the tree. My mom never doubted that. My mom is not Hawaiian. But she didn't doubt my grandma, because my grandma's like that. Put all the kids, myself included, in the car, and up the road we went. That must have been about 1962 or 3. I was very little then. The reason I say that story is because a big wave did come. It took our whole campsite, but my whole family was gone by that time up the road. I always remembered that story. Now, why would I say that story? Over the years, 1979 now, there's a huge drought in Waimea. There's no water. There's no rain coming. Sort of like a huge drought. So maybe I give you guys some pointers on what you can do. My dad, although Hawaiian, is not really raised. My grandma doesn't instill in him those things, because it's the time when they cannot speak their language. You know, the old story we all go through in our indigenous native cultures. We don't need to rehash that. But culture kind of goes underground at that time. But my dad is in charge of all the water for Parker Ranch. All the water. And the cattle are dying and he can't find any. And all the water we have is coming through one spigot in the middle of town. We're going with our containers already. So my dad remembers that there's a rain rock, a big pohaku in Waimea, but he can't find it. He doesn't know where he is, but he knows if you pray to it, they say it will bring rain. He doesn't really believe it, but he's desperate. You know, when you're desperate, you're going to pretty much go for it, right? And he says, I'm going to find this pohaku. Because the paniolo, the cowboy said, Uncle Guy said, get one rock if you pull it to that pohaku, gonna bring rain. So he actually finds it. And it's really big. I mean, we're talking about a huge rock. He asked the ranch to uncover it. It's all covered with grass, and you can't even see it anymore. Tall trees, everything, so they clear it. I watch my dad, like probably we're watching each other start to transform. Aren't we starting to transform over the Mauna? I know I am. I'm like totally transforming, and I'm just sitting in it. And I was watching my dad transform because now I'm 18 years old. And he says, out of like the blue, the first lei to go on this pohaku has to be a lei that has never been seen by human eyes or touched by human hands. And I'm like, whoa, Dad. That came like out of, like that. And we did. We went up into the forest and we found this lei. We found flowers and leaves. I made the lei. We brought it down. We laid it on the pohaku. The next day I went back and there was a plate of food there. Hawaiian food. I didn't know who put it there, but I tell you what happened to me. It changed my life. One plate of Hawaiian food on a rock changed my whole life, because I knew at that moment that our people in Waimea still remembered. We still remembered these things. Feed the spirit. Feed the pohaku. The rain gonna come. Nobody spoke about that in Waimea. But all of a sudden I saw it and I started to cry, and I went to the rock and I put my arms on it and I said, if you bring my father rain, I will take care of you for the rest of my life. And so will my children. I didn't even have children. So I always say, be careful what you say, like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you, and my kids will too. Because now they're in it, because I promised. And it came to be. So, okay, why am I going there? The real reason that we put leis and food there wasn't for the rock itself at all. It was for the mo'ovahine, which was half human, half, you would say, I don't want to say lizard, dragon. I can't really say in English what it would be, but I want to elevate that to above a lizard, okay? I'm not saying that, or even a dragon, but a being. And it really was that the nature being named Manaua lived in the stream above that rock. And when she came down to the rock to sunbathe, she saw the leis and food. And she would bring rain because she knew we remembered that still is what it is. Reverence, respect, protocol, life, tradition, culture. We began to do that because I made that promise. Okay, so I'm going to take you to 2009 now. My daughter is a young girl. We go there one day. We've been taking care of this pohaku already for their whole life. We're sitting on the sidewalk and she says, Mom, she's here, And these are things we would not have shared with you 10 years ago. But this is the time, because some of you might have kids like her. Some of these kids might be like that. They can see things, hear things, know things, and it's past the time where we say, oh, you're just seeing things. We don't talk like that no more. That was from Grandma's days. We don't do that. We believe. When it's true, it's true. How gifted we were and still are. Because it was an everyday thing in the past. Every day you can talk to Grandma gone 10 years, 20 years. And Grandma talk back and you hear her and you listen. So, anyway. We're sitting there and she describes the woman of the water to me. Perfect detail. And that woman, Manaua, who says it's okay for us to talk about her. In fact, they want to be talked about. They want to be known. Starts to tell her stories, and I start to write them down because they want to have a book published about them so that we behave ourselves, so that we conduct ourselves in a better way, so that we interact with nature in a good way, because they know we need scolding sometimes. But they say, you're only humans, we don't expect perfection. And I say, okay, I'll do my best. One day we get there, it's 2009, so she's been seeing them for a number of years now. And she says, Mom, there's somebody else there today. And I said, who is it? And she said, the lady, Mom, from the lake on the Mauna. She had never been to that lake on the mountain. Didn't know that lady from the Mauna. But she knew her. She started to describe her kikepa to me, what she was wearing. and the designs. And the woman from the Mauna started telling her what the designs meant and about the mountain. It was Mauna Kea, they called her. So I started to listen, and then we were leaving. And as we were leaving, this is 2009, I believe, end of 2009, she points to me and she said, "Mom, wait." And she turns around to the pohaku, which would have been right back here. And I know they're communicating. And she turns back to me and she says, "Mom, Mo'oina Nea said if you can stop it." And really, I didn't even know what she meant. I said, "Stop what?" How would I know what she was talking about? And to tell you the truth, I was just like all of you, except you have an excuse. You live up here. You know what I mean? I lived right under the Mauna. I look at that Mauna every day. I open my door, the mountain is there. I had no idea what they were talking about. And it was, I said, "Stop what?" And she said, "Mom, you have to stop the telescope." I didn't really even know there was going to be a telescope. This is already, they're in the planning. They already got approval to build it from Board of Land and Natural Resources, but there's 5 people contesting that approval at that time. So I'm going to give you a little history too, okay? So there's 5 brave souls that have been fighting every telescope, and they're still in it. I mean, I cannot tell you enough. I mean, how much respect I have for 5 people. She says, "You have to stop the telescope, Mom, if you can." And I'm going to tell you guys right now, because she hears this all the time from me because she's in it. My heart went to my toes, and I was petrified. In that second, I was so filled with fear. Why was I afraid? In my head, in 5 seconds went this: what about my job? That means I gotta go court. I have not been to court. What if I'm standing by myself? What are my parents gonna say? I went through all that and more in 5 seconds. You ever felt that? When you're going to step in, fear? Oh man, I knew fear. Fear came at me. And without saying a word, I just went there, and she looked at me, she looked at the rock, she looked back at me, she said, "Mom, Mo'oina Nea said if you cannot, it's okay." And I didn't say anything out loud. They just knew that I was scared. So I said, "Why do I have to? What is it? Well, tell me." So she would share with me from Mo'oina Nea that if they built it, it would change everything. 18 stories cannot go on the mountain because all of that negative vibration of construction, destruction, desecration, they cannot vibrate with that. The beings, the spirit world, the elemental forms, and they would all have to leave. And what would change is the climate, because they would take their snow element forms, their fog, their misty rain, their hail, and it would change everything. And it not only that, you guys, but what would really change, and I'm going to tell you guys why I'm in this, but try not to say it's, you know, if you say it, you might sound the kind, but I can say it because it's coming straight from my daughter, you know what I mean? So you can always say Pua said. But what I learned from my daughter, who learned from them, was that the Mauna Kea, Mauna Wakea, was connected to at least 20 other mountains around the world. And Mauna Kea, which I'll call it for right now, already had 13 telescopes on it. And the elemental forms, because they know we're not perfect, had tolerated that. And they had worked even harder. But even now, things were changing for us on the mountain. But they could not tolerate that. who could? Boom, 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 boom. You know, it's like, oh my God. Of immense proportions for at least 7 years. They would have to leave. When I went home and told my husband and Havani, if you know Havani's music, or my daughter Havani, who's in Poland right now, or she'd be here, and Kapule, they never faltered. They went straight, her and her dad went straight to ask for standing in the case. And they asked for standing on behalf of Mauna Kea. So already you can imagine, the next day the newspaper was like, this father and daughter went to Hilo and entered into the courtroom and said Mauna Kea needs to have standing in this case, a spirit.